Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making a seam ripper. Well, quite some time ago, and I'm talking a few years ago, I purchased this seam ripper kit and with the full intentions of turning it here on the show. And then at some point in time, I put it in a drawer or underneath my lathe and completely forgot about it. And now, while doing a little bit of cleanup, I found it. So I thought that we would visit that show today and I would make that seam ripper. Now it all starts off with a blank. So let's head over to the bench and I'll show you where to start with this project. Well, like most turning kits, like pens and razor handles and that sort of thing, the seam ripper comes with a brass tube that gets glued inside the stock. It helps to stabilize it, it strengthens it, it helps to make the internal parts fit properly. And what we need is a blank of a wood choice, species of your choice, whatever you like, as long as it's a hardwood. I'm not even sure what this species is. It was given to me many years ago, and I honestly don't know what it is. But you want to cut your blank so that it's just a little larger than your brass tube. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this over to the drill press. I've marked the center on one end, and I'm going to drill an 8mm, yes, metric. I didn't make the kit. Anyway, an 8mm hole straight down through the middle of our blank. Well, at this point, it's time to glue our brass tube into our blank. I have a little bit of butcher paper down here because I almost always make a mess of this. So we're going to use CA glue. We're going to apply it quite liberally here on the tube. Give a good coating all over, just like this. Now I have this old awl here that I like to use when I am inserting one of these blanks, just because it just makes it easier. So there we go. We got quite a bit of CA glue in there. We're just going to put it in the end, and then we will spin it as we put it in to get a good coating of glue in there, and then push it all the way into our blank. And then we will let that set up. And once your CA glue is dry, you need to trim your blank so that it is flush with your brass tube. Now normally I would like to use a pen mill for this, but because this is a much larger brass tube, my pen mill is too sloppy in here and will just make a mess. So I'm actually going to take this over to the table saw and trim it up just by cross-cutting the end off until I get it flush the way I want it. This kit requires a set of bushings. So this is the seam ripper bushing kit that you can purchase, and there's two different sizes. There's two large ones and one small, and depending on the style that you are going to be making, you need to set it up in a certain way. So this style here that I'm making is a double-ended seam ripper. So for that I need both of the large bushings. So we will place one on here just like this. We will place our blank over top and it'll slide on top of that bushing just like that. And then this other bushing, the larger one, will sit in place and slide right into our brass tube there. And then we'll take our knurled threaded knob and lock it in place. And that is our blank on our pen mandrel ready to go. So at this point now, we can put this little small bushing aside and we can head over to the lathe. So over here at the lathe, I have it mounted up between centers, and the very first thing that we want to do is we want to turn our blank round. Now the purpose of the bushings is to give you the diameter of the ends. So what we need to do at this point is we need to turn both of these ends down until they're flush with our bushings. So I have a little more to go on that. I'm going to get that finished up and then I'll show you the next step. Well, I stopped just a little bit shy of the actual final dimension because I want to leave some room for sanding. But this big bulbous middle here is way too big. I started off with a bigger blank than what I really needed. So I'm just going to spin this down to a more usable dimension. And at this point, I want to start shaping the blanks. So we're going to want a larger ball in the middle and then have it come in a little bit and then return to a ball on either side. So we're just going to mark it roughly here on the blank. This here is roughly center. And then this here is roughly the center of that center. And this here is the center of this half. So what I'm going to do is start working away to shape this, to bring this side in and bring it to a nice kind of bulbous area in the middle, and then finish it off as far as the final shape goes. Okay, I think you get the general idea of what I'm after here. So I'm going to finish up the shaping of this piece and then I'll see you when I get that done. Well, I think I'm pretty happy with how that shape looks. So at this point now, I'm going to sand the entire length of the piece here. I'm going to start it off at the 80 grit mark just to take out any gouges that there might be. I don't see any, but we'll start at 80. We're going to work our way all the way up to 320 grit. Now, I don't think we need a video of me sanding, so I'll get this done and then we'll continue from there. And with the sanding done, the last thing that I want to do with this before we get into the assembly is I want to apply the finish. Now for me, I'm going to use a CA glue finish. It is one of the hardest, if not the hardest finish to use on things like pens and seam rippers and that sort of thing. An extremely durable finish. It's extremely hard, but it's time consuming. I'm not going to do a video of that here today. I've already done a video of how to do a CA finish on the channel. I'll post a link to that below if you're interested in checking it out. But I'm going to get this all finished up, nice and shiny, and then I'm going to come back and see you, and we're going to get into the assembly of this. Well, at this point, we can take our blank off of our pen mandrel, just like this, and we can start the assembly process of our seam ripper. Now, there isn't really much of an assembly to this other than getting our spring retainer mechanisms installed inside of our turned blank. Now, this can be a little tricky, so the hardest part here is not kinking these things. You need to roll it up into a small circle enough to insert it inside your blank. And you just got to be really careful here because you just don't want to kink it. So we're just going to carefully push this in here. There we go, until it's flush. Now, once you get it flush, then your seam rippers, which are these parts that are in these padded bags. Let me just cut this open so I'm not pulling and end up poking myself with one of these. This then, boy, they sure didn't skimp on the packaging there, did they? I can't get it out. Okay, there we go. So this then retains in here like that, and that's what it ends up looking like. But when you're not using it, this slides inside this way and becomes a safer way to store it. So that's the one installed, and now we can put our other spring in place. My big fat fingers aren't too happy with these Ziploc bags. So there we go. All right. I'm going to try to roll this up a little smaller before I insert it. All right, so I just push that in there. All right, that worked a little better that time. And then this here should go in like that. And then this one here, I'm not even messing around this time. Now I'm just cutting it open. This one here should go in here like that. Look at that. Isn't that nice? And that is our seam ripper. And if you want the large one, you just take it out, pop it in. If you want the small one, you can pop that out and pop that in. And there you go. There is your turned seam ripper. That's just a gorgeous little project. And there you have it. A turned seam ripper. Guys, what a great little project. And with these turning kits, whether it be a pen kit or a razor kit or in this case the seam ripper, they really open up the world of turning to all turners of all levels of experience. They're quite easy to make. The biggest, most finicky thing here was getting those retention springs put inside. I was just afraid of breaking it, and as I was pushing it in, it was kind of springing back on me, and I eventually managed to use a few little tools and pulled it out of there and wrapped it a little tighter. So that will be my advice for you if you're going to make one of these, is when you're doing those springs, make sure that you take the time to coil them up and get them at least a little bit smaller than the inner diameter of that brass insert. And at least that way you can get it most of the way in, and then you can pretty much jostle it in from there. But I was worried there for a little bit that I was going to damage it. But it turned out great. I love the way this looks. And honestly, it's for my wife, and she's going to love it too. With this thing being double-ended, a large seam ripper on one side and a smaller one on the other, or you can close it all in and have it so there's no seam rippers exposed for safety. Like, it's just a cool design and it looks great. That CA finish is dead solid. It's rock hard. It will last longer than what the seam ripper will, I'm sure. CA glue finishes are absolutely amazing for small turnings. And I'll post the link below to that tutorial. You really got to give those a try, guys. Either way, this is a wonderful project. I'm glad I finally went through the drawer and found it and brought it to your attention today because I had a lot of fun with this. I haven't done a turning project in quite a while. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really want to send a thank you out to my buddy Hanif. He donated the blank for this ages ago in the hopes that I was going to be turning a pen or something, and it never made it to be a pen. It made it to be a seam ripper. So that's okay. I want to say thanks, Hanif. I really appreciate the blank, and you can see it went to good use. Guys, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click the bell, and then you won't miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. I hope you've enjoyed today's content, guys. I hope you're going to try this for yourself. I'll try to find a link and post it below as to where you can purchase one of these seam ripper kits. And more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.